Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3, I think we're on, of Play Chats, petition play chats with my play pals. The name changes every week. I just like the alliteration. It's playful. It begins with a P. It's got the word play and petition in. You guys know, if you've been watching these, that this is a series of videos that we are doing to explain why every single person should be signing our petition to make play-based learning statutory and continuous provision in Key Stage 1. If you're watching this and you haven't signed it yet, I guarantee by the end of this episode, you will have signed it, especially if you are a leader within a school. And if you have signed it, thank you so much. We are so close to 100. That what are we on now, Joe? Do you know what we're
Like
on?
97 and a bit. But
90.
by the time this is shared, we could even be at 100,000.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God, we literally could.
I bet we are. We
97,000.
100% will be.
Yeah. We're there, but we're going to keep going because we want this to be the biggest petition that has ever been in Parliament.
Of course.
That's the new goal.
That's the aim.
It is.
I love this.
We
She just go, it just keeps going, raising that bar.
The thing is, we are, in the words of Greg Bottrell, Joe and I are play people. That means we have delusional thinking. Nothing is impossible, and we can achieve anything.
Of course we can.
So, if you haven't signed, you're going to by the end. And we want you to be able to use these videos as exposures to share with people. You might be watching this in a staff meeting. You might be listening to this in your car. You might have just shared this with your next door neighbour who was like, oh, all children should be sat on tables. I don't know, but use it, share it, because we are spreading the message for play-based learning. And tonight I am joined by the lovely Jo Gray. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you've got a wealth of experience, a wealth of
Uh,
knowledge. I was talking to her earlier. She's spun from like early years to secondary, and I can't wait for this chat. So, Jo, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Yeah, I'm Jo. I currently am head of education at a company called One Education. My biggest passion is play, and I before I was in this role, I was a deputy head at a school in Trafford, and before that, I worked in Oldham, and I've always for play-based learning. So I was really fortunate enough in my second job to have a head teacher that really supported us, let me run with play, and actually got play into year one, into year two, and then up across through the school in different guises. Um, it's something that I wholeheartedly believe in, and I was just talking to Ruth then about my master's dissertation, which I finished last year, which was on educational leadership. But even then, because I'm so passionate about trying to get play in, I twisted it so that I could have play within my dissertation. So we explored how leaders make decisions, looking at it or exploring at it through the lens of those who carry on with play beyond early years and those who don't, and the reasons for which I hopefully be able to share a little bit tonight, and then hopefully also give some suggestions as well for going forward.
Amazing. And if people want to find you, to follow you, what's your handle?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm rubbish at doing this sort of stuff, but so on Instagram and Facebook, I'm also on X as well, but I don't really use it. Is Jo Gray Education, so Gray with an A. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's just Jo Gray. I'm sure you'll be able to find me on there. If you follow other educational people, hopefully come up.
Amazing. Jo Gray with an A. I love
Jo Gray with an
it. So, I think this is one of the biggest blockers or barriers. I mean, the biggest blocker that we have is that play-based learning within England isn't something that's statutory, it's not written into our curriculum. Obviously, it's huge in our early years one. It's in the Welsh curriculum, it's in the Scottish curriculum, but for our children, it's not. That's the biggest blocker. I think the second biggest blocker is leaders feeling they want to do it, but it's not the done thing, it's not the norm, a lack of confidence. I don't know what it is, but I would love for you to tell us what you discovered in your dissertation, like talk us through it, and then hopefully we
Of
can come
course.
up with some like, we're going to empower you, and this is what you're going to do.
This is how we're going to do it. Yeah, we're going to as Ruth's already said, we're going to change the world one teacher at a time, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things that we. So, in terms of the barriers, there are quite a few barriers to why schools don't often implement play-based learning, and like you said, one of them being the system, one of them being leaders' knowledge or experience or their vision and values, which we can unpick, that does tend to have a lot of crossover with the system as well. But there are other things as well, so sort of resources, staffing, etc. Most of which can be overcome, and you can find those solutions. And I always, whenever we look at deliver any training on play-based learning, I always look at what are the barriers and how can we overcome them so that you are empowered, so that you can overcome them, because that is the biggest blocker. So, in terms of school leaders navigating, I mean, I guess we call it a complex landscape of education, the decisions that they are going to make will have a massive impact on a child's journey. Um, so what we find in some schools, they will carry on with play beyond early years. Sometimes it's tokenistic and it's done just for a very short time in the first half term for that transition into year one. For some, it's sorry, my son's just come up the stairs. It's fine. He's gone.
Bless
His
it.
room's next to my room. I was like, he's my oldest. It's fine. He'll be
Oh.
quiet, I'm sure. Sorry, guys. And for some, it's about that opportunity to look at things in a different way. So actually, we so some educators will look at, actually we need to continue this play beyond early years, and some educators in year one, year two really do want to go ahead with this, but they then find that they've got blockers or barriers, sometimes from the leadership point of view, rather than actually from themselves. I've been fortunate enough to have had teachers that let me go with it when I was in school. But that isn't always the case. And I know that I was really fortunate. And what you find is the schools that do allow it, you've either got somebody like myself or like you, Ruth, who are like that obsessed with play that the head's just going to say yes because they know what you're like, they know that you're going to drive it, they know that you're passionate, even if they've not got a full understanding themselves, but they really believe in you. But then that person could move on,
Mhm.
so it isn't necessarily sustained. Um, you may have a head teacher who's been in early years. That tends to be the other time that play does seem to be recognised in early years. Or you've got a head teacher who hasn't been in early years, but has really sort of taken the time to understand child development and invest in that knowledge. And they were mainly the three reasons as to those schools that did continue with play, all of which meant there was an advocate in the school for if somebody came into the school for an inspection, because let's face it, that was one of the biggest things that came up was, if somebody came into my school, what would I say? How would I be able to articulate it? And they knew if they had that knowledge, or if there was somebody in that school that had that knowledge to be able to put it across in an articulate way, then they were more likely to carry on with it. The majority of heads, however, um, did not continue with play beyond early years, partly because of their own knowledge.
Mhm.
Um, but even when they did have the knowledge, or they had the vision and the values that they knew play was the right approach, what we found was that it was over 60%. I can't remember this percentage exactly, but I'll email it to Ruth afterwards. Um, Over 60% of heads were not following or not being true to their vision and values because of the accountability system. So it goes back to sort of what you were saying, that the the biggest sort of blocker to this is that accountability system. So this petition that you are doing is completely the right way to drive it in one sense, because those there's a lot of heads out there who do believe in play, but they just don't feel, and they shouldn't have to feel brave, but they don't feel brave enough to implement play beyond early years,
Yeah,
um,
I
which is a real
completely agree.
shame.
I know, like my experience of even when I speak to like some of my own children's teachers, it's I do believe in it. But that's just the way it is. There's that sense of I believe in it. I'd like to do it, but as a teacher within the school, if you haven't got that sort of power, that's the system that you're in, and that's your job, and it pays your bills and it pays your mortgage, and you kind of have to do what you're
Yeah.
told to do.
And it's a real shame, because actually if you look at the nuances and you look into some of the systems, it doesn't say we can't. Um, it doesn't say we can, but there is nowhere that says, don't choose play as an approach. And I think it's some of the research showed that it's not necessarily the systems, but it's our perceptions of the systems that make us stop doing play as well. Um, and I mean, they've not made it easy. So in 2008, there was the first sort of play. I'm very aware of this like light bulb effect on my head.
We look
Um,
very angelic and Christian.
angelic, both of us, don't we? Yeah. There was a in 2008, it was the first time we had a play strategy in England, and then there was obviously that coalition in 2010, and it stopped. But they had so much driving force behind it. It was Play England again, who really were pushing it. And again, I know that they're doing a lot at the moment. They've got their new strategy out, and I'm hoping that alongside everything that you're doing, Ruth, and the Playing Education Group, and all your I don't know what we're calling them, the Play Petition Gang. That's our new name. Um, will hopefully will make that change again, but hopefully it will be longer lasting than it was the last time. There was a Cambridge review in 2010 that suggested play should extend between early years. It was a massive study, and there was over like 1,500 organisations got involved in this study, but it was frozen um, during the pre-election period, and then it was never taken up again. And then I feel like we're sort of coming back to where we were, but I'm hopeful that actually this time will, you'll pass it through court, it'll get into the curriculum, and maybe then it will stick. But yeah, who
No.
knows?
I mean, that is our ultimate gold standard goal. That is our goal. We want to make it change in law whereby this is how it is done in England. And it's in China, in Singapore, they have play protected within their kindergarten, which goes up to 7. We all know, like the Scandinavian countries absolutely smash it, do amazing play-based learning. Wales, Scotland, we are genuinely like the outlier. Like England is falling behind. Why? Why have we not got people that make these decisions, that make this power, that are saying this is clearly the right thing for our children?
Absolutely.
Let
And all the research says so.
Yeah.
Absolutely, like you just said. If you look at the stuff from the OECD, um, United Kingdom, there's 12 countries um who are higher on the OECD list than us, but all of which start primary education later than we do. Um, we are the only country where we start the year they turn 5 as the statutory year. There are some that start at the age of 5, but none that is basically starting at the age of 4, in the way that we do. And that's not okay. So it's bonkers. It does absolutely astound me. So sort of going back to like the leaders' point of view, I'm not surprised that, you know, leaders and teachers feel really, despite there not being anything black and white in that curriculum that says you can't play, I'm not surprised people do feel like pulled and swayed to a more formal way because that's the way they've known. I mean, we could go down the whole Victorian system and looking at the way in which England's classrooms look. And if you walk into a classroom now, they look very similar to what a classroom looked like in the 19th century, which of course isn't going to help the situation. But what we've what I guess we've got to do is just sort of look forward and think about, well, that's where we're at. So what can we do to sort of support schools going forward to help them feel empowered to be able to take on a more playful approach?
Yeah.
And one of the things that came up in the dissertation that I did, I spoke to an incredible head teacher who was openly very much I'm a year 6 teacher. I've always was a year 6 teacher, but I switched places with the early years lead, and we taught in each other's classrooms. My husband's just bought me a brew. Thank you.
Ah.
um, we they switched classrooms, and but not just for like a day or two, but for a really like prolonged period of time. And then she was like, "Okay, wow, I actually get why we should be playing now." Um, and so then that was when she was deputy head, and when she became a head, she has worked really hard. She had to get a lot of buy-in from her team to get her team on side, to get her governors on side, because it was quite an affluent area who felt that their children didn't need play, which is a whole other episode, which, everybody needs, all children needs play. Um, and what she did eventually, she got the team on side, um, had playthrough into year 1, and when I last spoke to her, it was going up into year 2 and in year 3 as well. But what she does is when she goes into any school or any classroom, sorry, in her school, she asks herself, would this be okay for my child? And if it's not, then why is it okay for any other child? And that's been her sort of her motto. But she really changed her perception despite really thinking she was very much all they do is play down there. They, that's them and this is us. And she was very separate, and she really did change her mindset. And I think the reason why that one really stayed in my mind is because a lot of the other heads that I spoke to were all early years Key Stage 1 practitioners, or had been, whereas she hadn't, and was very open with the fact that she knew exactly what she had to do to change because she wanted to understand early years.
Do you know what? You
Um,
just said that, and it's like reminding me of something like the staff meetings over the years that I would sit in, and they like early years would kind of be there, and people who were leading it would be like, "Oh, it's not really relevant to early years," because the staff meetings were always so heavily focused on like key stage 1, key stage 2, assessments, data, this, that. We've been doing it wrong. Like our staff meetings, our way of teaching should be early years have got it bang on. How can we
Absolutely.
learn from them? And yet, the years like me reflecting when I was a teacher, actually, the whole narrative around what is a good education in a primary school is that what we do in Key Stage 2 is great. Key Stage 1 has to just keep up with us, and early years it's the corridor down there that you
Of
don't go
course, I
to
know.
unless you're from early years.
I always talk about the upside down Christmas tree, and actually why we're starting with the top going to the bottom, when we should be starting at the bottom. So let's flip that Christmas tree, have the big bit at the top, and we start with where they are. We meet them where they are now. And it what I think schools and school leaders need to sort of need to have that knowledge and understanding of how child development works, so that they then understand that, well, the play that children doing in Key Stage 2 is not going to look like the play that they're doing in early years, but that hands-on exploratory learning and how they can make independent, creative, intuitive problem solvers all the way through in year six if you do look at the way in which play is taught.
So if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, I'm open to it, but I don't understand that, could you explain like how play looks different in
Oh yeah, definitely.
year
Oh
six?
my yes.
I think
So
that's a great one.
yeah, no, of course. So I'm currently running a Playful Schools project. I've also got a book deal with Root Lue, so I'm writing a book on thank you on the Playful Schools toolkit, which is what all this is about. And the idea is that yes, you'd have your continuous provision model in early years and key stage one, but that would slowly evolve so that those skills that the children learn in early years continue to be built upon so that we still have really independent learners in year six. So in year one, in theory, it should be a lot of what the children are very, very familiar with in early years. But as they evolve into year two, the continuous provision aspect in the room may not look exactly as it will. It shouldn't look exactly as it does in early years. It would still look like it's got zones, etc. But you might start to see different resources. So, for example, it might be that the children are helping design the museum in the classroom because they're looking at something to do with that in history, and then they create that museum and that's their project for their history, and the parents are coming in and it's part of that. Or it might be something where, say, they're learning the four countries of the United Kingdom, they don't have to showcase that in a worksheet. They have the choice as long as that outcome is still the same. So we're not saying throw your curriculum away. The curriculum's a statutory document, it's something we have to use, but the worksheet isn't statutory. We don't have to do it on a worksheet. We could the children could have a wall with green paper behind, that could be a green screen, and they could present, the four countries of the United Kingdom recording each other on that. You could have a jigsaw with the four countries of the United Kingdom, and the children could talk to them about that. Some children might choose a worksheet because that's what they like, and that's okay. So you might have that. You might have B-bots out with a mat. You might have post-it notes. They might draw a map. There's so many different options that the children will be able to access freely by choosing and using the resources around the room, and then sort of progressing as you go through into key stage two. Those learning objectives will become bigger projects. So your curriculum still, I know subjects and understanding subject terminology is the thing that we're into at the moment, so you can still do it in your subjects, but having that recognition that learning doesn't stay in our subjects and crosses over is something that the children do need to be able to understand. So looking at those projects and how we can use our mathematical knowledge, our English knowledge, etc., pulling into a project. So, for example, in year six, let's jump all the way to the other end. You could. You'd be hoping through the journey that they've gone on that they would be so independent in their play projects that you could say, this is what we're learning about, World War Two. I want this thread on, you might be looking at what happens to evacuees in World War Two. Show me what you know, and you've got this amount of weeks. So you might have a research station in your classroom. You might have the children set up a role play area based on what they've learned in terms of air raid shelters, etc. You might have a mini library. You might have artifacts that link to World War, etc. But the children would use that, and they would be working collaboratively together to build upon all that knowledge that they've got and present it in whatever way they want. So some of them might do, artwork. Some of them might present what they know through a full project. It might be that they have a debate as a class. They might invite their parents in to see or showcase something. It might be interactive with QR codes on, so they're linking it to their IT, and it's endless in terms of what they can do, but so much more playful and so much more experiential learning than it would be in terms of giving them a worksheet. So I think what a lot of leaders, it would help a lot of leaders to sort of maybe step back and think, what is it that actually our children need for going forward in the future? Our children do not need to sit at a table, listen to that adult directed teaching, and then do a worksheet. Because actually, is it that that's what the children need, or is that what we've sort of been conditioned to think they need? And maybe we're maybe possibly um it's that sort of we were talking, I don't know if we were talking about it on this recording or before, it's about that almost that fear of not having control and not wanting to let go, whereas it's the ownership becomes of the learning becomes on the child, and you become a facilitator, and it's a massive skill. So what leaders would have to do would be to give a lot of CPD around um, the role of the adult, the role of the environment, how you assess through that sort of situation. But all of that is doable, and a lot of it can be learned through our colleagues in early years. And alongside that, I would be say looking at the in terms of the continuum of play, because what you'd be seeing in the classroom wouldn't necessarily, there'd be elements of free play as you got into key stage 2, but there would be a lot less. So your outdoor play and the way in which you have the children accessing lunch and play times would be very much free play, where zones are set up outside with all of the resources for the children to be able to play. But because your playful learning takes place in school as well, the children still know what to do and how to use and how to access that. Um, and on this training that I've been creating for the Playful Schools project, we talk about empowering as well as the lunchtime organisers, the middays, whatever you want to call your particular middays. You would also want to empower the children so that you'd have year sixes helping support and lead because they've had that experience over a number of years. So yeah, that's what I'd say in a very short answer. Sorry, Ruth.
But I know, but it's so powerful for people to be able to visualize actually and how it could look. And I think sometimes we talk about play. Play is what it is, playful learning, um, learning through play, those sorts of things. But actually, if the word play scares you and you're a leader listening to this, think about like what you were saying, like inquiry-based learning or inquisitive learning. It's being able to explore and investigate as whatever the curriculum wants us to do, but in a way that is joyful, fun,
Yeah,
engaging, that just means that our children can engage with it in a multisensory way that's intrinsic to them. And you wholeheartedly will get better results because you will have happier children, healthier children,
absolutely.
children who understand how to delve into things that interest them to learn more. And so many skills, like the skills that we need, we've got AI. I could find out one piece of knowledge like that in
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
second, in a second. I need a general knowledge, but I don't need to memorize facts for a test. I do because that's what we have.
Currently, yeah.
But actually it's those skills that I need. So sometimes if you like the words play scares you when you're thinking about the older children, think of it in that way instead. But I was just going to ask as well, I think everything you've just said, I'm like, let's just set up a school. This sounds
Let's
amazing.
do it. Yes.
Let's set up a school. And we'll do that next. We'll get it in
That's
place.
our
We'll
next
set
thing.
a
Yeah.
school. But a big blocker, I think, for some leaders, you did touch on it briefly, is how do they evidence learning when it's not on a worksheet?
And I think this is something that we need to, I'm going to go to early years and refer to early years again, but so a couple of things I would consider in terms of one of the things that the early years did a couple of years ago was actually we don't need all of that evidence that you were collecting because you know the children so well. Now, I know for a fact that it actually scared a lot of early years practitioners to not have to collect all this evidence because it was what they had done and what they knew. Um, but now you ask them and they wouldn't go back because they do know their children so well. A lot of it is about being able to articulate it. So we talk about having child development conversations, and all that means is sort of in those staff meetings where the early years teachers aren't allowed, they're having their child development conversations where it's more useful. No, but finding time in the week where you talk about um, individual children and articulate what the children have been doing, where they're up to, what their strengths are, what they need to do next. And because you're not sat with a group all of the time, you will have more of an overview because you are interacting with the children all the time. So the child development conversations, I would sort of, you see them sort of like almost like pupil progress, but really individual for the children. I've got a script as well, which I can share with people. If people are interested, just get in touch. I can send a child development conversation script over for you just so you can see it. Um, and so that's one thing that I would suggest. But the other thing is to sort of move away to be asking that question of who's that evidence for and why are we collecting that evidence? I know when I was in the classrooms, we'd it was when I was sort of in the in between time of fully going through the playful approach in year two. So I've done it in year one and I've moved up into year two to really embed it in there. And I was printing a photograph of the children doing something in the role play. And technology was definitely not as good as it is now.
Mhm.
But I was printing so I was printing a photograph and then I'd print it however many times for however many children that were in that group, stick the same photograph in all of the children's books. Um, just so there was evidence in the books that they but who was that for? And the parents will have seen it because we used to send little things out on the website and stuff. That evidence was purely for either SLT, but I was on SLT, so it wasn't even for them. It was for Ofsted, it was for the accountability, it was for the moderation, key stage one moderation as it was. Um, and I'm actually a moderation manager as well for two local authorities. And I say this on the session, on the training, like if you are doing something that is purely for the reasons especially in key stage one for getting that evidence for moderation, then is that what it should be about? I think writing in our current system is different. And I say that because I haven't thought of another way around that one yet, because you kind of actually have to have the physical evidence of the writing. But other than that, um, everything can be evidenced in other ways. The DFE for Key Stage One actually states now that evidence for assessment should come from the day-to-day work, which could be oral, practical, or written evidence. So actually, if you have to cover oral, practical, and written, they're telling you there you don't have to have everything written down. So again, it's looking at the nuances of the um, legislation and what's legal and things like that. If when you speak to schools in they've had who are playful, who've had Ofsted in, they don't they and especially in the newer system as well, they want to speak to the children, they want to hear from the children. They're not, it's not in the books, it's not in the books, it's about what the children know. And I would be saying to the if you're doing it for other people, I'd be saying just go and get the child. We've done it in the past in moderation. Um, when I was in the school and I was being moderated, we had a child who was incredible, and we had to have the local authority come in because they didn't believe the data we were putting forward. And she said, "Have you got any other evidence?" I said, "I've got the child, and I knew what this child was like, and she was absolutely brilliant." So I went and got her, and they couldn't argue because she was incredible. Um, and I think it's just sometimes we have that fear of having to document everything, which hasn't I don't really know where it's come from, because all of the um, documentation, your national curriculum, etc., it says it's up to the school how we do it. Um, And yes, there will need to be some evidence, for, like we said, for writing, but you can have floor books, you can have seesaw, the children can document their own learning, they can take photographs of what they've done, they can upload it. Um, and in theory, if the play is of a good quality, they'll be articulate enough to articulate it to whoever comes into school. Um, so yeah, that's my viewpoint anyway.
I love that. One of my favorite ways is like training your children to be able to document themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like literally, if you have like a journal or whatever it is, them taking ownership and being like, I'm really proud of this. I'm gonna, you can teach them to use an iPad to connect it to a printer to print a picture if they're like super proud of that brilliant creation that they've done, and they can stick it in their journal themselves. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
that is what we want to instill in children. I want, in my dream world, to look in your book or your evidence and actually for every child to be so unique that I can see that individual child. It makes me cringe and makes me feel sick when I think of some of the books that I had in some of my teaching posts where they are just carbon copies of the same thing over and
Blue
over.
Peter, yeah.
They've been told to do it at the same time, and they've all been told to use a, I don't know, expanded noun phrase in this piece of work. Like, is that really a true reflection of what the children can do, or is that a reflection of this conveyor belt of education where you can do it in that moment at that point because that's what I've told you to do? But then are you actually going to remember that in real life? Whereas if you've got a playful classroom and children can express things they're writing or whatever it is when they want to in the moment that works for them, they'll apply it like so much better and so individual. And that's what children are.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've heard about there's a guy called Ross Young who he does lots on he does a lot on writing, and one of the things that he talks about is creating sort of like a your own sort of publishing house in the classroom. So again, like when I was saying about evidence in the writing, it's doing that, but it doesn't have to be all the same, like you were saying. They can publish it, they can create it in their own little way, in their own little, creating the books and producing little books so they're really proud of them, sending them to whoever. And yeah, that absolutely that side of things. Um, and I think one of the other things that you were saying then about the you said something about the writing. It's about that element of choice, and the more choice and control and ownership they have over what they're learning and what or how they're showing you they have learned, the better. Does it matter how they show you as long as they know? I worked with a school recently. We looked at all the children who were getting working towards in the foundation subjects in year 3 to year 6. And what we found was actually the majority of these children who were getting working towards were your children who had special educational needs, were disadvantaged, had were vulnerable for whatever reason. And we explored it a little bit more, and we looked at what and how they were having to evidence their learning for these subjects. And we did a little trial, and we basically said, right, let's take away the writing element now of these assessments and how the children are being assessed in history and geography, etc. And there was very few children that were working towards in those subjects. They were working towards because yes, they are working towards in writing due to difficulties with that actual concept of writing, but nothing to do with the knowledge that they needed to achieve the history or geography. So why are we presenting our children with the opportunities to have to write everything when there's so many other ways?
No. And I just always think about, imagine being that child that struggles with writing and that then being a barrier to every single area of the curriculum. Like imagine how that feels to go to school every single day and know that you've got this barrier and that whole you're perceived as working towards across everything because of one area. that the education system has said is the most important area. Like, it doesn't even make sense. This is what one thing I always say, like play or play-based approaches enable all children to thrive because it removes those barriers. Yes, there's a time and a place, and they do have to learn these skills, and we support them. We put the scaffolds in, we put the support in that they need for those skills. But actually, we want them to feel that sense of I am amazing and I have this knowledge and I can present it the best way that works for me to thrive. And that's what play allows us to do.
100%. And I think there's a lot around the whole inclusion side of things coming through with Ofsted. And I just hope that the silver lining to all of that is people start to think, well, actually, this is a brilliant way we can support all of our children, all of our vulnerable groups. I look at my youngest, who is neurodivergent, and he's got an EHCP, and he's fortunate enough to go to a school that is playful, and they have it's an infant school, and they play until the end of this year. And that has done him so many favors. He absolutely loves it. He loves forest school. He loves the way in which he gets to learn in so many different ways. Um, and he's actually helped. So I've always been massively passionate about playful learning, but as soon as he started to see the education system through his eyes, it's changed it and cemented my belief that play is the right approach, so much more. And I think if we can get it, like I've never quoted Ofsted in my life, but if we can get it right for our most vulnerable children, then we're getting it right for all. And I never ever thought I'd be quoting Ofsted, but I actually do slightly agree with that
Of
because
course.
we it's so important that we are making sure that we are working for all of our children, and sort of going back to the point of view from the leaders, those that found it difficult with the trying to um sort of see their vision and values through to fruition, as it were. um a lot of it was a worry around the sort of, I'm trying to how to word it. I guess around the system, because they felt ultimately they had to accept that responsibility. Um, but if you look at it through an inclusion lens, and you've got to sort of, you know, accept responsibility for what we're doing for all of our children, those children who need that support. It talks about those strong foundations and really empowering our um, teachers to have the children have those strong foundations all the way through. So if those strong foundations are not secure by the end of year 2, those strong foundations need to go into key stage 2, and they've got to try and secure them there. Actually, that accepting that responsibility as a head, I guess, and this obviously all came out after the research, after the dissertation. What they need to sort of think about there is, well, what about accept? Yes, I need to accept responsibility for this system, but I need to accept responsibility for my child, for all of my children, um, because ultimately it does sit with them. So there's a different lens as well.
I know there's so many. I'm just getting up a if I can find it really quickly. So there was an article because what you've just said there about uh play, like you quoting Ofsted again. What was your quote that you said that play the Ofsted quote? What did you say?
You get it's something
Yeah,
like, you get it right for the most vulnerable children, you get it
yeah,
right
right.
for all.
So that is again, I truly believe like a hill I would die on. I think it's like when we talk about our children with special educational needs, we say what's essential for those children is beneficial for all children. It's the same philosophy, really, like what's
Of
going to support
course.
our most disadvantaged ones. And um Will Zoppolini, who has been a huge, huge help.
Oh
He was
yes,
on here
yeah.
the other day. He's like my little research guru, bless him. He knows it all. And he sent me just yesterday a study that got published 2 days ago in the US. and it was on the Montessori method. So, our play-based
Yes,
learning
yeah.
versus regular schooling. And one of the key findings from it were that the benefits for all children were there, but the effects were strongest among children from lower income families, although children of all backgrounds benefited. And these findings are a helpful reminder that Montessori was originally designed to reach low income communities. So
Yeah,
those
of
children
course.
that are
Yeah.
disadvantaged, play-based learning supports them the most. Like that is a research study that was released 2 days ago. It's Lillard et al. 2025, if anybody wants to find
Brilliant.
it. But yeah, it's so current. Like this is not new. We know this, but we're having to make it current again to champion our children.
And that's it. And I think I'm just looking at some of the quotes from some of the staff that I interviewed when I was doing that dissertation. Um, a lot of what they've said is it is about like they do know it. They know it. They were just worried about the way in which they articulate it. So I feel like if we can support and help give them that research and those that language, which is kind of what we were trying to do with so Ruth and I are part of a group called Plain Education, which will hopefully start moving forward at some point when we've all got time. But the idea around that is to give people the opportunity to find those schools to go, right, okay, well, they've done it there, or to find that research and be like, right, well, this is the research that I need so that that worry is is reduced and so that people can feel more confident in being able to say, this is why we do what we do.
About it. And actually, I will pop this in the show notes as well. There's a document that accompanies the petition, where we created it for the petition, which is research that shows you that play-based learning is the best way to learn. It backs that up. So if you are a teacher, a school leader, a parent, it doesn't matter who you are listening to this, and you're like, okay, I believe in this, I want to feel empowered, you can download that. I'll put it in the show notes. And that is just a little bit of light reading because it's written in a really user-friendly way to help you feel more empowered going away from this, and to push the petition and explain why it's so needed and help us reach those 100,000 signatures and beyond and beyond.
We'll be beyond by the time this is shown, we'll be beyond, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, And I think the other place to look is the Chartered College. So they have the Chartered College of Education. They've got a full resource on um the playful toolkit as one of they look at rethinking curriculum, and one is all about the playful toolkit. So I helped contribute to a lot of the research that went into that, but there's case studies and all sorts in there as well. And their last impact journal magazine focused loads on looking at play. So there was case studies in that as well. So that's another one, just sort of for now, if people are listening thinking where else can we get that research, and or email Ruth or myself and we'll absolutely send more research over because there's so much out there now. One of the things that you have to do for when you're doing your dissertation is um part of the literature review, you have to find evidence against what you're saying as well. And I couldn't. There's nothing out there that says play isn't the right thing to do. There's evidence that says we're worried about what we're doing, and there's evidence that says the system is going towards a more formal way, but there's nothing that says play is the wrong thing to do.
What an amazing quote to finish on there. I think that just sums it up, that yes, it might be a difficult decision to make, but if you make this decision for your school, for your children, there is no research that shows it's not the right decision, and you are making a decision that is putting children at the core of their education and their learning
Absolutely.
journey. And that is what we want. That is why we are here. That is why we are putting so much time and effort into pushing this petition for the outcome that we want is play in all our schools. And we're going to get
And
there.
We
Yeah.
will get that, absolutely, 100%.
Thank
Um,
you so much,
just
Jem. How's
can
your
I
day? Yeah,
leave you with one little quote
please
from
do.
um the dissertation. I'm just trying to find it now. I've just had it up there. Hang on
Yeah.
2 seconds.
While you're finding that, I'll just remind everyone to sign and share the petition, to check out the show notes for any links that we've spoken about, and share this with everybody because that's the whole point of it. That is why we're doing it, to push play and push the need for it. And Joe's
Um,
found her
Thank you. I have.
note.
So I'll summarise because it is quite long, but there was another head in the study who had a lot of staff going to her saying, you shouldn't be doing this, don't do it. It goes against what we believe, it's going to make things too hard for us. And she had a lot of staff saying that they wanted to leave. So she said, just stay with me for a little while. Um, and now it's flipped. So none of the staff left, and all of the staff say they can't leave that school because they can't teach in any other way. They have to teach through play because it's what they fully believe in. So she turned a very reluctant staff team round. Um, and so what I'm trying to say there is, yes, it's brilliant for the children, but it's also really powerful for the adults because it brings so much joy to them as well. So just thought I'd end on that as well.
I love that too. And I do believe that as well. You know, we've got a teacher retention crisis. Play will solve that. If you give it
It's
time,
going to solve
playful
everything.
learning will solve that. Guaranteed.
Honestly, I reckon we could have talked or could talk for another
Still
few
can.
days.
We can
Yeah,
do another one. We can do another one. Still do more. Watch
absolutely.
this space.
Uh, Ruth, you've been brilliant. Thank you for giving me the time to chat.
No, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.